cluster subdivision to divide 57.107 acres plus or minus into 123 single-family lots to be located on certain parcels of land lying and being in Indian River 100, Sussex County. The properties are lying on the north side of River Road, which is Sussex County Route 312, approximately 0.3 mile northwest of Chief Road, which is Sussex County Route 311. The tax parcel IDs are District 234, map 34, parcels 39, parcels 79.00, and then District 234, map 34.11, parcel 9.00, 9.01, and District 234, map 29, parcel 226.01. The zoning district is MR, Medium Density Residential District, and GR, General Residential District. Submitted into the record, Mr. Chairman, we have a copy of the applicant's preliminary subdivision plats. We also have copies of the now superseded preliminary subdivision plats that were replaced by the latest version. We have a copy of the applicant's exhibit booklet, which includes a tidal buffer plan and a wetland survey. We also have a copy of the plus comments and the applicant's response to the plus comments. The exhibit booklet includes the applicant's Chapter 99-9C response. We also have a geotechnical report from the applicant. We also have a copy of the DENREC coastal engineering evaluation submitted into the record, along with site photographs from the applicant. We also have the copy of the staff review letter and the applicant's response to the county staff review letter. We also have a copy of letters that have been received from Delaware Department of Transportation. We have a copy of letters that have been received from the Sussex County Engineering Division, Utility Planning Division. We have a letter from the Delaware Department of Agriculture. We also have the TAC comments, including a letter from US Fish and Wildlife, the Delaware Electric Cooperative, the Delaware Forest Service, the DENREC Division of Watershed Stewardship. We have a copy of a letter from DENREC Division of Waste and Hazardous Substances. We have a copy of a letter from the Office of the State Fire Marshal. We have a copy of another letter received from the Sussex County Engineering Department, Sussex County Engineering Department. We also have a total 110 opposition letters have been submitted, 0 letters are submitted in support, 2 comments are submitted of a neutral stance, and then we also have opposition petitions, 3 in total, with a total signature by staff's count of 1,646 total signatures. I would note within those letters we have received, Mr. Chairman, that some of them do appear to be duplicates. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Peet.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Council Robertson, members of planning staff, and members of the public. My name is Mackenzie Peet, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Saul Ewing, LLP. And here this afternoon, on behalf of the applicant, Stillwater Harbor, LLC. Applicant representatives Megan Connor and Hal Stewart are present this afternoon. Our team also includes Jim Erickson, PE, and Jason Palkowitz with Solutions IPEM. Ed Linné, Professional Wetland Scientist of Environmental Resources, Inc., Gregory Sauter, PE and Vice President of Geotech Associates, Inc., Betty Tustin, PE and PTOE of the Traffic Group, and Mary Schreider-Fox, the developer's attorney that that's office represented the applicant in its purchase of the properties, and that handles the applicant's homeowner association governing document drafting, if there's any questions maybe that are specific that come up. Our team, everyone is available for any questions the Commission or public may have. The applicant proposes Stillwater Harbor to divide 4 undeveloped parcels with a gross site area of 57.107 acres, more or less, that you'll see on the screen here momentarily, into 123 single-family lots as a major subdivision in an MR medium-density residential and GR General Residential District, employing the clustering option as provided in Section 115-194.3 of the Zoning Ordinance of Sussex County. Throughout my presentation, I'll refer to that as the code. The project proposes 26.94 acres of open space, or 47.2% of the site, subject to final site engineering, voluntary tidal and non-tidal buffers as applicable, from the 2.952 acres of non-tidal wetlands located on the site and 2.450 acres of tidal wetlands located on the site. To be clear, wetland areas are not proposed for development and will remain untouched. The plan also proposes the restriction on the use of 10.6 acres of marshland and natural areas, and specifically natural forest areas, as well as the afforestation of a portion of the property up here totaling 1.7 acres of land, for a total of 12.01 acres of forest and natural areas to remain.
What was that number again? I'm sorry, 12?
Sorry, 12.01. And it is noted on the cover page of the preliminary plan as well. The plan also provides for amenities including a pool and pool house that's located towards the front of the community, a wood chip trail system within the wooded area of the site. The project is located on the north side, if we could switch back to the aerial, that would be helpful, of River Road at the intersection of Wheatley Lane and Millsboro, Delaware, in an area that's commonly known as Oak Orchard. Oak Orchard has a rich history, being associated with the Nanticoke community and Clark and Harmon families specifically. The commissioners may also be familiar with Rosedale Beach and Resort that operated in the region from the early 1900s through the 1970s. The hotel and resort operated from the early, as I just stated, the early 1900s through the 70s. In the pre-integration era of the 20th century, there were very few places for people of color to go for entertainment and hotel accommodations. Rosedale Beach became a destination point for many people along the East Coast. Rosedale Beach was officially incorporated in April 14, 1937, and the resort included a hotel, boardwalk, dance hall, picnic and beach area, campground, and amusement park. Well-known artists such as Louis Armstrong, James Brown, Cab Calloway, Aretha Franklin, and Stevie Wonder, to name a few, played at the resort. Once Delaware integrated its beaches, hotels, and other public facilities, visitation of the beach declined. The boardwalk was destroyed by the storm of 1962 and was not replaced. Although people still visited the resort until the mid-1970s, the Rosedale Beach Hotel and Resort was eventually sold in 1983. And today, the Oak Orchard community is primarily composed of single-family homes, mobile home parks, and ag lands. Title research confirmed that a portion and most of the site was historically owned by Charles Cullen, who purchased a roughly 72-acre piece of land that consisted of this site as farmland. In the 1930s, and we believe in 1930 specifically, the farm was sold to a member of the Harmon family. Then in 1956, the land sold to Isaac Jackson, and it was owned by members of the Jackson family until it was purchased by Compass Point in 2021 and later transferred to the current owners, Stillwater Harbor LLC. Significantly, this parcel to be dominated obviously appears to be dominated by mature growth forests, but we actually learned that a large portion of the parcel was historically farmed, as will be discussed by Mr. Linay. The development includes 4 parcels identified as tax map parcel numbers 234-34-79, 234-9, 234-34-9.01, and 234-29-26.01. Excuse me. Parcel 79, 9, and 9.01 are still owned and are owned by Stillwater Harbor LLC. Parcel 26.01 is owned by Millsboro Holding Company. Majority of the site of parcel 79, a 53-acre parcel that is forested, is subject to split zoning, and I'll show you that here. So you'll see a large portion of this site here is subject to split zoning with MR towards the front and GR towards the back. We have what I'll describe as the emergency access parcel designated as GR, and then the front portions, as I said, as MR. The site's main entrance will be located off of River Road. DelDOT encouraged the developer to contact the neighboring property owner. You'll see that as Exhibit 21 in the record. To discuss the possible reconfiguration of her entrance, Miss Ida Wheatley's entrance, for the purpose of providing access to her properties through the proposed entrance. The developer, as I stated, did contact Miss Wheatley, as evidenced in Exhibit 21. As the paper letter reflects, a letter from the Indian River Fire Company dated March 3, 2021 was submitted into the record that raised concern about emergency access to the site as a result of flooding on River Road. After a series of discussions with the fire company, the applicant explored options for emergency access to the site and ultimately acquired parcel 22.6.01. An emergency access is proposed over and across that parcel and subject to a 50-wide easement recorded of record in Book 54, page 100, that connects to Jackson Drain Lane and then to Oak Orchard Road. The applicant proffers conditions of approval A through W that I'll submit now. And then I will mention some of the specific details with respect to the access. So one property owner had mentioned that a gate will control access to his property, was concerned about that in one of the letters of opposition that were submitted. And that gate will actually be located, as shown on the plan, sort of here instead. And we just wanted to clarify that. Obviously open to have discussions with the owners in that area about what location makes the most sense. That owner had also mentioned concern with potholes and the unimproved lane as an 8 to 10 foot wide easement. As I just stated, the easement record itself reflects that the easement area is 50 feet wide. We also obviously met with the fire department multiple times and did present this plan, and they said that it was sufficient for their use. Also, the developer is more than agreeable discussing any desired and reasonable improvements and long-term maintenance obligations with other homeowners that benefit from the use of this easement. The developer also, as I stated previously, intends to plant 1.7 acres of forest, and the purpose of that is to not only add forest, but to also provide for some additional privacy to residents that are obviously living behind the site. Relevant emergency access in Condition K states as follows. The development shall have an emergency access to and from the development at a point along Jackson Drain Lane, where Jackson Drain Lane intersects the site. The access shall be used for emergency purposes only and shall not be used for regular routine ingress and egress to the site by community residents. This emergency access shall be shown on the final site plan. The emergency access shall be secured by a gate with a Knox box or similar device to accommodate emergency access controlled by the community's homeowners association, the local fire department, and other emergency providers, end quote. The surrounding area is developed, as you can see, residentially. There's also some lands that are commercially developed, obviously, within vicinity of the site on 24. Nearby subdivisions include Riverdale, Warwick Place, Captain's Grant, Orchard Manor, Oak Meadows, Driftwood Village, and recently approved Plover Point. Some of these surrounding communities are characterized as medium to higher density developments than the proposed Stillwater Harbor development that proposes a density of 2.25 units per acre in districts that permit density of 4.36 units per acre, or a total of 238.3 units. As stated, the applicant proposes 123 units, 115.3 homes less than permitted by code. Of course, there are site constraints that contributed to that reduction, but it is significantly less than what's permitted. Letters of opposition were submitted into the record from a couple neighbors and property owners that characterized themselves as solely farmers despite residential developments constructed by those farmers that could be characterized also as developers, landlords, etc. One specific development, Riverdale Park, happens to be within the 100-year floodplain and is a pre-existing community with limited, if not non-existent, stormwater management. Although records are not great, we learned that there are approximately, we believe, 405 mobile homes within this community. And what is visually apparent in this area is that this community is densely developed. As a land use attorney, I do not use the word developer or landlord with any negative connotation, although weaponized by some. I only state the obvious that some of the opposition letters were submitted by neighbors who are farmers, but who also happen to be developers and landlords. Just as those lands were developed in compliance with the then existing or non-existing regulations at the time, my client seeks approval of a development that's code compliant, and actually in excess of the same, proposing a lower density community, as just stated, than what is permitted by code, and that is sensitive to environmental conditions on site, while also proposing a stormwater management plan designed to comply with the state sediment and stormwater regulations. The concept plan for Stillwater Harbor was presented to PLUS on June 10, 2021. A letter was subsequently provided to PLUS which addressed comments point by point. The preliminary plan was also sent through the Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, process. Despite comments received during the PLUS and TAC process, updated comments were received from the Department of Agriculture this week. I had the opportunity to speak with the Secretary. He called me back, to his credit, by phone on April 25, 2023. During our very brief call, the Secretary shared that his department is concerned about the development's impact on inland bays and impacts to wetlands, forests, and drainage. To be frank, we were very surprised to receive this letter from the Secretary, dated April 20, 2023, that was uploaded to the land use docket on April 24, 2023, or 3 days before this hearing, and after receipt of any and all agency comments received during the PLUS and TAC processes. During my call with the Secretary, I tried to explain that our plan preserved wetlands and portions of marshland and natural forest. It remains to be seen if the department reviewed the paper record for this application as submitted on April 17, 2023. Because its April 2023 letter is not only inconsistent with the letter that was previously submitted by the Department of Agriculture on October 21, 2021, but also inconsistent with what the paper record reflects. This plan's compliance with the county code. That letter from October 21, 2021 confirmed the February 21, plan's compliance with the former buffer ordinance applicable to the regulation, plantings, and specific specification for those, and invasive species considerations. I'll submit that initial letter that we had received, or that had been uploaded, I should say, as of October 1, 2021. So in the 2021 Delaware Inland Bays Comprehensive and Management Plan, it is explained that Delaware Inland Bays are 3 shallow interconnected coastal lagoons that separate them from the Atlantic Ocean. The Inland Bay watershed comprises approximately 292 square miles of eastern Sussex. As noted in that plan and based on 2012 estimates, land use and land cover in the watershed is 31% agriculture, which includes crops, orchards, and pastures, 17% forest, including brush, 28% water, including the bays, and specifically Rehoboth Bay, Indian River Bay, and the Little Assawoman Bay, wetlands and barren areas, and then 24% developed and developing lands. And the plan notes that one of the continuing challenges to meet nutrient goals are not only new developments, but obviously also agriculture and stormwater-related issues, which I believe is understood for people that live in this area. I can speculate as to other reasons the Department of Agriculture submitted the April 20, 2022 letter into the record. But ultimately, my focus this evening is to apply the facts of this case to the law that applies. And the Secretary's letter provides little, if any, weight on this particular issue because the letter raised no issue with the plan's compliance with the code. We certainly understand the Secretary and Department's interest in conserving open space and farmland, but it appears the Department missed the mark here. To conclude on this point, I note that the Department has been silent since October 21, 2021, almost a year and a half ago, submitted a letter the week before the hearing that was uploaded to the county's website 4 days before this postponed hearing, that the April 2023 letter is inconsistent with the previous comments provided by the Department. In contradiction to what the letter states, wetlands are being preserved so much so that the non-tidal and tidal wetland buffers comply with the recently adopted Drainage and Resource Buffer Ordinance using the buffer averaging method provided therein. 10.6 acres of forest and marshland area will be restricted from use, as I stated, in areas that were determined to be most critical for preservation, and the site's stormwater management will be designed to reduce the volume of runoff directed towards the Chief Road and River Road intersection specifically in this area, as required by the DENREC sediment and stormwater regulations designed to address the amount of water flowing from the site and also the quality of that water, because effective stormwater management reduces the amount of runoff but also runoff pollution. As a final comment, my client takes very seriously comments that this development has a discriminatory effect, and all I'll say to that point is that at the federal and state level, housing discrimination is illegal, and protected classes include race, color, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. Moving on, the applicant has submitted an extensive exhibit booklet for your consideration that has been before you for at least 10 days. The applicant specifically submitted exhibits 1 through 21. If I could get, is it perhaps already up, the exhibit booklet? So exhibit 1 is an area vicinity map specifically. It displays much of what I just described. Thank you. There we go. So exhibit 1, as I just stated, is an area vicinity map. And then Exhibit 2 includes all of the plus comments. Exhibit 3 thereafter is a copy of the state strategies for spending policies and spending map. And the map shows the project's location within investment levels 2 and 3. As provided in the plus comments, investment level 2 areas reflect areas where growth is anticipated by local, county, and state plans in the near future. Investment level 3 reflects areas where growth is anticipated in the longer term, or areas that may have environmental or other constraints to development. Exhibit 4 is a copy of the developed and protected lands map. 5 is a copy of the zoning map showing the site within the MR and GR districts. 6 is a copy of the future land use map showing the site within the coastal area, a designated growth area. Adjacent and nearby properties are also designated the same, with some properties, as I have stated previously, along Route 24 designated as commercial areas. Exhibit 7 includes aerial photographs of the site. Exhibit 8 is a floodplain map, and majority of the site you'll see is within flood zone X, with a balance of the site located in zone AE. Exhibit 9 is a groundwater recharge map. Exhibit 10 is a soils report prepared by Geotech. Exhibit 11 is of significant interest, and I'm going to summarize it a little bit. It's a copy of DNREC's Oak Orchard Coastal Drainage Evaluation, Engineering Evaluation, excuse me. This report's dated 2015 and was prepared by URS Corporation for DNREC's Division of Watershed Stewardship. The report summarizes URS's analysis of the drainage and flooding concerns in the Oak Orchard community and identifies small to medium-scale drainage solutions to reduce the frequency and duration of flooding. Drainage deficiencies noted in the report include undersized and non-existent storm drain systems, storm drain systems that require maintenance, and low ground surface elevations. These deficiencies result, as the report explains, in problems such as localized flooding, backwater flooding from inland marsh, or coastal inundation directly from the Indian River Bay. The report describes how certain solutions were prioritized and are prioritized over others for implementation. The report notes that some solutions are under the jurisdiction of other agencies, not just DNREC. So this is significant because the ability to implement those solutions is dependent on cooperation of other jurisdictions beyond just DNREC. Other agencies such as DELDOT, for example, or local homeowners associations, as well as private residents. This project team has studied this report and taken its findings and recommendations into consideration in designing the preliminary plan, and especially in its design of its stormwater management system. Ultimately, Stillwater Harbor will be maintaining or improving the drainage conditions because the stormwater management system will be designed to reduce the volume of runoff directed towards Chief Road and River Road, and will also have no adverse impact on the western crossing. There's another low-lying area on the opposite side of that area, as required by DNREC sediment and stormwater regulations. We also learned of the implementation of one project, we believe, near Mercer Avenue that was spearheaded by Delaware State Representative Ruth Briggs King and funded by the state after a prolonged easement acquisition process with private property owners that has actually improved drainage in that one section once the solution was implemented. Exhibit 12 includes stormwater drainage areas, exhibits to be discussed by Mr. Erickson. Exhibit 13 includes the preliminary jurisdictional determination to be addressed by Mr. Linné. Exhibit 14 is a copy of the forest stand delineation report to be addressed by Mr. Linné. Exhibit 15 is the forest retention and afforestation exhibit to be discussed by Mr. Linné. Notably, the applicant has proffered the permanent restriction, again, of the use of 10.6 acres, more or less, of the site that would be preserved as marshland and natural forest. The plan also proposes, again, 1.7 acres of afforestation. Exhibit 16 is the buffer averaging exhibit to be discussed by Mr. Erickson and Mr. Linné. Exhibit 17 relates to Exhibit 16 and includes an analysis by Mr. Linné regarding buffering of wetland resources and forest retention analysis. And if you haven't read that, it's extremely helpful. There's a lot of background on the buffer ordinance and how you actually go through the process of analyzing some of the applicable law. And he includes in that analysis that the current plan is in full compliance with the May 17, 2022 Drainage and Resource Buffer Ordinance using the buffering average method, confirms that the plan takes into consideration the recommendations by his company made with respect to the siting of areas for forest retention, including 10.3 acres or 21.2% of the forest, with a focus on retention in Forest Stand A, which he'll discuss, where overlapping environmental features make that area significantly important with respect to conservation. Exhibit 18 is the environmental assessment and public facilities report that's required by Section 115-194.3 of the code for any development in the coastal area containing 50 or more units. Exhibit 19 is a copy of the Indian River Volunteer Fire Department's correspondence from March 20, 2023. That letter confirms that its first letter, dated earlier, identified 2 areas of flooding along River Road and its suggestion for an alternate access to be provided. On March 2023, our project team met with actually, I think it was earlier in March that we had met with the fire company specifically to present the alternate access described. And then the March 2023 letter confirms that the access addresses their operational concerns during an emergency. Exhibit 20 are relevant documents concerning the emergency access to the property. And finally, Exhibit 21 is a copy of a letter and exhibit sent to Ms. Ida Wheatley, property owner of tax map parcel number 234-34.11-10 and 10.01. That letter explains that DelDOT asked the developer to consider providing an access and encouraging communication with Ms. Wheatley to discuss the same. Okay, now that we've gotten through that part, I'm going to move into a discussion of the project's compliance with the coastal area, and then I'll switch to a different presentation speaker before I conclude, so you don't have to continue to just listen to me. To address code compliance first, the parcels are located in the MR and GR general residential districts, requiring a minimum lot area of 7,500 square feet, a minimum lot width of 75 here, a front yard setback of 30, side and rear setbacks of 10, and a maximum building height of 42. All proposed structures will comply with those requirements. Stillwater complies with the purpose of the Municipal Code sections 115-28 and 115-36 of the code, and the comprehensive plan by proposing a low-density, single-family residential development that protects water resources, watersheds, forest areas, and scenic views. Specifically, the code section 115-29 of MR permits single-family detached homes on individual lots, as does 115-37 of the GR district. Section 4.4.2 of the code discusses the structure of the future land use map and confirms that the county is divided into 2 planning areas: growth areas and rural areas. The parcels that are subject of tonight's application, as previously stated, are located within the coastal area, a designated growth area that permits development of single-family homes and provides a clustering option, provided that significant permanent open space is preserved and the development is connected to central water and sewer. As I stated, Stillwater proposes 47.2 acres, or 47.2% open space, and will be served by central water and sewer service. The project, as I stated, is located within investment levels 2 and 3. The subdivision also complies with the coastal area requirements as provided in Section 115-194 of the code. Clustering of single-family detached lots to a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet is permitted in all residential zoning districts using a central water and sewer system within the future land use designation. Any development in the coastal area containing 50 or more dwellings, like this subdivision, is required by code to submit an environmental assessment and public facility assessment report that has been submitted for your review. And then finally, although the code does not require a coastal area cluster subdivision to meet the superior design requirements, this proposed subdivision did consider those elements in its plan, proposing significant amount of open space, landscape buffers to protect environmentally sensitive areas on site, including tidal and non-tidal wetlands, preservation of marshland and natural forest areas, and a stormwater management system that will act as an amenity and natural companion to the natural features on site. Superior design considerations are further detailed in the paper record. If there are any questions about those, please feel free to ask our team those questions at the conclusion of our presentation. I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Linné to discuss some of the environmental considerations that I briefly described.
Good afternoon. My name's Edward Linné. I'm a professional wetland scientist and environmental scientist with Environmental Resources Incorporated. I began making an assessment of the environmental features on the what I call 53.9 acre portion of the site. So that's the property that does not contain the currently proposed emergency access in November of 2020. Topics included the delineation and classification of wetlands and forest areas on the property and determining if any rare, threatened, or endangered species or critical habitats were present. I have also performed additional work providing guidance with respect to resource buffers and forest retention. ERI field delineated the boundaries of both federal and state regulated wetlands in accordance with current agency standards and methods. Those boundaries were surveyed, and they are accurately represented on the project plans. A wetland delineation plan and a report was submitted to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on May 13, 2022, and the Corps reviewed that and issued a jurisdictional determination approval letter approving those boundaries on June 23, 2022, and I'll submit that letter for the record. There are 3 acres of federally regulated wetlands on the site, half of which are forested freshwater wetlands, and 2.5 acres of federally and state regulated tidal wetlands. All of the wetlands border an unnamed stream channel that forms the westerly boundary of the site. On March 23, 2022, I conducted a consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in regard to any threatened or endangered species or critical habitats that might be present on the property. The service's letter of that date indicated no such species or habitats were present. This confirmed my observations and the information that I had reviewed in the DENREC Division of Fish and Wildlife comments that were provided as part of the PLUS process. In early March 2022, I was contacted by a raptor biologist with the Division of Fish and Wildlife, Ms. Jordan Brown, in regard to a citizen's report of a possible bald eagle's nest that might be on this property. I had not previously observed any nest on the site, and I subsequently made 2 additional site visits to observe for any activity or any active eagle's nest. I didn't find anything. Then the applicant arranged for the Division of Fish and Wildlife to make a site visit, during which Ms. Brown and I toured the entire property. That meeting was on March 18, 2022. No eagles were observed, and as indicated in the department's site visit report, which I'll provide to you, nothing was found. I made a follow-up visit on April 6th of this year to reconfirm that no eagle activity or nest was on the property, and again, that continues to be the case. As part of the understanding the history and the current condition of the forest on the site, ERI has conducted a delineation of forest types on the property. The total area of forest currently on the site is 48.53 acres, of which 47.5 acres is upland forest. This 47.5 acres is sited upon well-drained sandy soil types in the Fort Mott and Henlopen series. Except for forest immediately bordering the wetland area along the western property line, the soils occupy a well-elevated position on the landscape, and they are above a 100-year floodplain, with a depth to seasonal high water that is often in excess of 6 feet. Such soil types are well suited for development purposes. Currently, Sussex County has no standard protocol for characterizing forest communities. Other than buffering requirements for wetlands and abutting properties, it has no specific bulk standard requirements for the retention of forest areas. In 1991, the state of Maryland enacted a Forest Conservation Act. And in that act, the State Department of Forestry prepared a Forest Conservation Technical Manual. And that manual outlines a procedure for evaluating the types of forest and the quality of forest. It also outlines procedures for looking at things that would make particular forests priority areas for retention, such as being a wetland buffer, occupying steep slopes. Another thing would be a riparian forest within a floodplain, or is the continuous block of forest greater than 100 acres or more? In the case of the forest on and adjacent to the Stillwater site, it's not a block. It's not a large forest block of 100 acres or more. So basically, there's a process by which you consider those conditions and factors in addition to the age and the structure of the forest, and then go through a planning exercise of how you would design your land plan. And that's what we did here. So the forest stand delineation report that we prepared, there were 3 forest stands identified as forest stand A, B, and C, and they were all based on the age, the size class, and the species composition. That would be, I think, Exhibit 15, if you could put that up. There's a drawing.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's just be patient. Just be patient.
There it is. Okay. So you can see that there's a heavy dashed line, and that shows you forest stand A, and forest stands B and C. And it also shows the westerly border, is the tidal wetland area, and essentially there's a stream channel that forms the western border of the site. So as part of that forest stand delineation report, I've reviewed aerial photography from 1927 through 2017, with the exception of an area of forest along the marsh edge on the west side of the site and an area of long-standing forest on the northeast quadrant of the site identified as Forest Stand A, which totals 15.08 acres. The entirety of the Stillwater property was an active farm with a single home site. The property was actively tilled until about 1992, when farming operations ceased and the buildings that were on the property were demolished. Remnant debris from the demolition is found throughout the central portion of the site. Forest Stand A equals, again, 15.08 acres, is an oak-dominated hardwood forest with predominantly white and southern red oak. It has a diverse assemblage of other species such as American beech, American holly, black cherry, and a variety of hickories. Low-lying portions along the marsh have some pine and red maple. Due to its age, size class, structure, it is rated as having a good to priority structure. It is right on the borderline between those two categories per the Maryland Technical Manual. And a priority forest is of excellent structure, and that is where forest retention efforts should be directed. Within Forest Stand A, there is a subzone. A 4.2 acre zone was identified within Forest Stand A. And this area contains forest within the 100-year floodplain, forested wetlands, and forested wetland buffer areas, and steep slopes. Using the technical standards of the Maryland Forest Conservation Manual, this makes this particular area the highest priority for retention. Forest Stand B and C are coniferous forests. They occupy the former agricultural field portion of the site, and they amount to about 33.45 acres. Both stands are very similar. B is different in that it has a slightly larger diameter size class of the loblolly pine overstory and a less diverse understory as compared with Forest Stand C. This forest has evolved over the past 30 years. It was rated under the Maryland Technical Standards as having a poor to good quality, again right on the borderline forest structure, and it can be considered to be an earlier mid-successional forest. There is some presence of invasive species in the area occupied by the old homestead, again kind of consistent with where you have some debris, demolition debris from that past use. The results of the Forest Stand delineation were then used to inform the Stillwater land planning process with respect to forest retention efforts in the plan that is now before you. On May 17, 2022, Sussex County enacted an ordinance known as the Drainage and Resource Buffer Ordinance, which increased protections of water and wetland resources. The Stillwater project was the subject of a land use application prior to enactment, and it is exempted from the provisions of that ordinance. In the case of Stillwater, only a 50-foot buffer from the boundary of state tidal wetlands is required. The actual buffer that would result under those requirements would amount to a very small amount of forest retention, in that some of the emergent kind of marsh areas that aren't classified as state wetlands would be part of that. So the actual amount of forest that would be retained is very little. One of the goals of the currently proposed plan was to make sure that Stillwater was in full compliance with the newly enacted buffer of the Drainage and Resource Buffer Ordinance. And that requires a 100-foot buffer from state-mapped tidal wetlands and a 30-foot buffer from all non-tidal wetlands on the site. Another goal was to maximize the retention of priority forest, Forest Stand A, especially within the 4.21 acre where multiple priority retention features such as steep slopes, riparian floodplains occurred. To that end, and for your review, Solutions prepared that exhibit, the Forest Retention and Afforestation exhibit, which takes into account those goals. I have reviewed that with respect to compliance with the Drainage and Resource Buffer Ordinance. I was a member of the working group that helped the county prepare the drainage and resource buffer ordinance. So I believe that I have a good working knowledge as to what it requires. And as I had stated, it's in full compliance. In my view, and allowed under the ordinance. There are areas where the buffer was made a little bit larger and a little bit smaller in accordance with the buffer averaging provisions of the ordinance. A total of 10.3 acres, or 21.2% of the existing forest on the site will be retained. Retention is focused on forest stand day. Of the 4.21 acre forest area with overlapping priority retention features, 3.7 acres, or 87.9%, is retained. The project also proposes an additional 1.17 acres of afforestation of an existing field area that will provide for a future access into Stillwater for emergency purposes. With that afforestation, 12.01 acres of the site, or 24.7% of the site, will be retained as forest. In the applicant's proposed conditions of approval, a buffer management plan per the current drainage and resource buffer ordinance is going to be offered. In addition to that, as part of that plan, a 10.6 area of land consisting of marshland and forest on the western boundary of the site will be protected in perpetuity under a declaration of restrictions. That language in that declaration of restrictions is basically mirrors past similar conservation instruments that I've been involved with and have developed in conjunction with DENREC and the Corps of Engineers. So that 10.6 acres will include all the forest within and beyond the existing wetlands and the proposed wetlands buffers. The retention area provides a wide buffer for the protection of coastal wetlands and waters that border the site. It also provides an area for wildlife to utilize, and it provides a wildlife corridor for wildlife to move back and forth adjacent to the existing wetlands that are tidal wetlands that are on the site. Again, Sussex County has no standards for forest retention, for bulk forest retention. However, in the case of this plan, a significant area of forest is being provided, and that area and that conservation effort is being directed toward the forest with the highest value on the property with respect to its quality and its ability to buffer and protect the waters of the inland bays. I'd like to provide these, and if anybody has any questions.
Yep.
Unless there's something pressing, the commission will probably wait until your presentation's complete to ask any questions. So you just keep rolling. Of course, the minute I say that, someone will have a question, so that's okay.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Erickson. I'm a professionally licensed civil engineer with Solutions IPM. My presentation will address the proposed stormwater management for the Stillwater Harbor subdivision and the related drainage impacts and benefits associated with this project's development. At the conclusion of my presentation, I will be available for any questions the commissioners may have about the stormwater management plan, or we can wait till the very end. Stillwater Harbor is located on River Road in the Oak Orchard area, as shown in the exhibit appearing on the screen. This next exhibit shows the location of Stillwater Harbor as outlined in red. Significantly, a large portion of Oak Orchard is located within the floodplain, where many residential developments exist in the vicinity of the Stillwater Harbor project. Significantly, much of the existing undeveloped land in this area is located outside the floodplain. This includes a majority of the Stillwater Harbor site. The site's stormwater management considered the significant amount of developed land in the floodplain and the known drainage concerns in the area, as will be discussed. This is a colored topographic map of the area. The yellow-green areas on here represent lands with a higher elevation. The purple and blue areas represents land with lower elevations. As you can see, Stillwater Harbor is located in the yellow and green areas and is therefore at a higher elevation than much of the surrounding areas. Despite its higher elevation, the site has a well-defined channel along the western boundary of the parcel, which is a natural on-site drainage feature that's taken into consideration when designing for the stormwater management and maintenance. To the southeast of the site, there's another existing channel that's not as well-defined as along the Stillwater Harbor property line. Both of these channels ultimately cross River Road and discharge into the Indian River Bay. To the east, the channel crosses under River Road in the vicinity of the intersection with Chief Road. To the west, the channel crosses under River Road approximately 475 feet west of the proposed entrance to Stillwater Harbor. Both channel crossing areas are known to flood River Road occasionally, causing road closures by DelDOT. These are current existing drainage challenges. DelDOT's aware of the issue. DENREC is aware of the issue. DENREC identified and discussed both areas in its Oak Orchard coastal drainage engineering evaluation performed in 2015 and detailed in a report that has been submitted into the record as Applicant's Exhibit 11. This evaluation identified drainage concerns within Oak Orchard area and provided some conceptual remediation measures. DENREC has implemented some of the work identified in this report. I also spoke with a DENREC representative who informed me that DENREC requested funding for some of the larger projects that were identified in the drainage evaluation. As provided in DENREC's report, project priority is dependent upon availability of funding and other considerations such as property owners' cooperation to grant easements required to implement drainage solutions. The challenge with implementation is not only funding dependent, but also noted in the report that has to do with the fact that drainage solutions are sometimes under the jurisdiction of other agencies other than DENREC, including DelDOT. Implementation, as noted in the report, is also dependent upon cooperation with homeowners associations and individual property owners. If you look at this next exhibit, it shows the approximate location of the conceptual improvements in the area west of the Stillwater Harbor site. These improvements were identified in the DENREC evaluation as a top priority project. That evaluation included an exhibit similar to this exhibit that's displayed on the screen and that showed proposed conceptual improvements for this area. To summarize, the project includes the addition of 3 pipes with tide gates, replacement of the existing pipe, an addition and replacement of bulkheads, and raising the road in this vicinity. Nothing is finalized as far as funding or priority with respect to this project. But as I previously indicated, part of that final decision will be influenced by the availability of easements from private property owners. As you can see, there's significant work that would need to be done on private property in order to build this. So if the property owners within the vicinity of the improvements were to reach out to DENREC to confirm their willingness to work with them on easements, it very well could improve the odds of funding the drainage improvements in this location sooner rather than later. That is something the property owners can do, and it will benefit everyone in the area, regardless of the status of this application. Similarly, this exhibit identifies approximate limits of the conceptual improvements at the River Road and Chief Road intersection. Like the other project, the improvements associated with this project will require easements from private property owners. These improvements propose similar measures as the other channel crossing location, bulkheading, raising the road, and the addition or replacement of pipes with tide gates. The project also proposes regrading of the boat ramp area, which is on private property and floods during high tides. I want to note that the DENREC evaluation did not prepare a concept of this project's improvements, so this visual is based off of a concept that we prepared based off of the written summary. Similar to the western channel crossing area, private property owners may be able to improve the timing and implementation by cooperating with DENREC and any other necessary agencies that may require easements in order to make the improvements that address the current drainage deficiencies and challenges. Without these easements, DENREC cannot perform the work on private property. Both channel locations face similar drainage concerns. There's 2 primary factors that contribute to the drainage condition of each area. One factor is upstream watershed runoff. The areas of upstream of river road crossings shed water during storm events. The water runs down to the lowest point, which in this scenario is the road crossing. The water builds up and eventually passes through piping, or in extreme events will crest over the road. As mentioned, two primary factors contribute to drainage condition in each of these areas. The first, as just described, is upstream watershed runoff. The second factor concerns various types of coastal flooding. People don't always picture pipes as a two-way door, but when downstream water is higher than upstream water, pipes will flow backwards until the water elevation normalizes. When the tides are high enough, or if there's stacked tides due to offshore winds, the bay rises and occasionally will crest over the road, which is something we see in many areas, coastal communities in Sussex County. And this also occurs at the channel crossing location located at the River Road and Chief Road intersection. These two factors also create cumulative and compounding effects, especially when high tides are present at a large storm event. When that occurs, it is possible to have water from the tides taking up some of the upstream storage potential, increasing the likelihood of flooding from upstream watershed runoff. One question the Commission is likely to have is about the frequency of flooding events on River Road. Unfortunately, there's not empirical data to confirm the frequency of floods. Because of the lack of empirical data, our team communicated with DENREC, DELDOT, and the local fire department to learn more about the frequency of flooding. We also reviewed letters that were submitted to the Commission and previously mentioned in the previously mentioned DENREC report. Generally speaking, we learned that the intersection of Chief Road and River Road floods approximately 4 to 8 times a year and is primarily driven by coastal flooding. The western crossing floods approximately 2 to 5 times a year. We have also studied information about DELDOT's monitoring of the bay elevation in this vicinity, which appears to generally confirm the flooding estimates that were provided. In our conversations with the fire department, we were encouraged to seek an alternate emergency access for the community, understanding that River Road sometimes is closed by DELDOT during these events. We met with the fire department's request and provided an alternate emergency access to provide access to the site in a case of emergencies, as discussed by Ms. Peete. For the intersection of River Road and Chief Road, the upstream drainage area is approximately 0.12 to 0.13 miles, which is approximately 83 acres. The visual here shows the approximate drainage area, and this is a delineation very similar to that which was identified in the DENREC evaluation. Much of the drainage area is comprised of agricultural fields along Chief Road, and the Stillwater Harbor project currently makes up about 36% of the drainage area draining to the intersection of Chief Road and River Road. There also is a shallow channel for discharge on the eastern boundary of the Stillwater Harbor site. Considering Stillwater's presence in the drainage area and shallowness of the eastern boundary channel, the proposed stormwater management design limits the discharge to the eastern boundary of the site. The rear of the site of the Stillwater Harbor lots along the eastern boundary will all have swales that will convey the runoff from the areas within the limits of disturbances to the internal ponds. Overall, the net drainage area towards Chief Road and River Road intersection will go from approximately 83 acres of drainage area to approximately 54.25 acres of drainage area. This will decrease the rate of the 100-year storm drain to this intersection by about 21%. So if you look at the pre-development runoff volume for the 100-year storm from Stillwater Harbor that currently drains this area, it is approximately 80,000 cubic feet. The proposed design anticipates that the post-development volume from Stillwater Harbor that drains that intersection in the 100-year storm will be approximately 4,000 cubic feet, about a 95% reduction from the current conditions. Where Stillwater Harbor makes up a large percentage of the drainage area, it's anticipated that the implementation of stormwater management plan will result in relatively immediate and significant improvements in the upstream contribution, and it will lower the 10 and 100-year flood elevations by reducing one of the factors previously addressed, which is the upstream watershed runoff. For the western area of the site, the overall drainage area is approximately 1.52 to 1.53 miles, or approximately 980 acres. This coincides with the drainage area identified with the DENREC evaluation. As previously stated, this intersection floods less frequently than the Chief Road intersection, and DENREC has identified this crossing as a higher priority project in their evaluation. Stillwater Harbor's proposed limited disturbance draining to that crossing is anticipated to be about 4.5% of the overall drainage area. Because this is a much smaller percentage in comparison to the drainage area just described, the overall drainage impacts of Stillwater Harbor on this location's drainage conditions are limited, as a relatively small contributory drainage area located at the bottom of the watershed. That said, the site will be designed in accordance with DNREC sediment and stormwater regulations, accounting for stormwater management and maintenance and treatment of runoff for the quality of water. For the benefit of water quality before the final discharge point into the bay. Stillwater Harbor will not impact the anticipated elevations of the channel during neither the 10 nor 100-year storm events. There are numerous ways to approach this analysis given the complexities with tidal influence and other considerations, but in all scenarios investigated, the anticipated water elevation within the western channel remains the same in the existing and post-development conditions for the 10 and 100-year storm events. In addition to the water quantity measure, the stormwater plan will comply with DNREC regulations for water quality, which will include any pollution control strategies, including any relevant total maximum daily load or TMDL requirements. The 2021 State of Inland Bays reports does identify the inland bays as receiving a fair rating. I would note that the primary source of pollution for the inland bays are agricultural uses. They produce the most amount of nitrogen pollution per acre, and in fact, 75% of the pollution reductions needed to meet TMDL requirements are from agricultural land uses. Stillwater Harbor will meet or exceed DNREC sediment and stormwater regulations, and the plan also provides voluntary buffers from wetlands far exceeding the minimum requirements at the time of this submittal by providing and also provides voluntary tree retention and a voluntary area of afforestation. As a result, the Stillwater Harbor project is minimizing pollution contributions to the inland bay. In conclusion, Stillwater Harbor will maintain or improve drainage conditions for both channel crossing areas described during my presentation because the stormwater management plan has been designed to reduce the volume of runoff directed towards Chief and River Road intersection, and it will have no adverse impact on the western crossing as required by DNREC sediment and stormwater regulations. Additionally, the site will provide water quality in a manner that meets or exceeds DNREC sediment and stormwater regulations. And I can wait for questions or take them now.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, hand it over to Greg Sauter with GTA.
Good afternoon, commissioners and county staff. I'm Greg Salter. I'm a professional engineer, and my office of Geotechnology Associates, and my office is in the county business industrial park on the other side of town here in Georgetown. So I come here tonight really to me, looking at this site, and I was involved in the site as a consultant, but overall, looking at this site, it seems to me the flooding of the community is a big concern. And having experience with my personal life through many flooding events and loss of my ancestral home because of it, I have a personal commitment when I see communities that are experiencing flooding, and I have a natural tendency to want to help and resolve it. So with that said, the flooding condition that the community experiences here in Oak Orchard is really a regional issue, a regional problem. It's not going to go away if, as Jim said, if the Stillwater community is not built. So one of the things I look at, or what I think about, is how can we improve the flooding condition that the residents are currently periodically experiencing, whether you have king tides, nor'easters, or such. The coastal influence of the flooding coming in and is really something that contributes quite significantly as in addition to the rainfall precipitation stormwater management as the saying goes. For this particular site, we're going to have 4 ponds, 4 basins that are going to help not only control the water runoff from the development of the community itself, but it would also help. We have a significant amount of rainfall that comes to our community from the east. So this community with the stormwater management basins and such is going to also help to regulate a significant portion of the runoff from the east. And as Jim said, that should help with the drainage flooding conditions at Chief Road. The other thing with the stormwater management, what it helps with, particularly with the basins and with the design, design needs to be conformed to DENREC and Sussex Conservation District regulations. It also impacts the timing of the runoff from the particular site. So that should also help mitigate or massage timing issues with these flooding events. As considering the western drainage area, Stillwater Harbor contributes a minimal amount to that, and as Jim said, per DENREC regulations, there will be no adverse impact on the flooding. Flooding is still going to occur on that road crest. It's still going to occur, but Stillwater Harbor shouldn't be impacting that. So I'm sorry.
No, we ain't saying
Oh, okay. So what are the benefits that the developers are providing the community with this? There are a couple of them as I see. One is helping to relieve the flooding conditions, make the current residents' lives easier with respect to that, or lessening the impact of it. It's not going to make the flooding go away. But the other thing is important is emergency services, as was discussed earlier with other projects. There's going to be an emergency access way. It's another emergency access for when we do have flooding and cresting, particularly across the western portion, or the portion west along River Road of the site. The fire department emergency personnel will be able to have an alternate way going through the site and accessing people who have emergencies at that time. Having been through flood events, it seems to be that that's a time when people, if they have heart conditions or other ailments, that's when it's going to flare up. I know, with my experience, at least, that's the case. So, there's other options too. And looking at the DENREC, in my experience, I have a lot of communication with DENREC. I work with DENREC on a number of projects resolve issues. So that's part of my job. And DENREC is to me, my opinion, DENREC is very responsive to the community's needs, to Sussex County in particular. And in my opinion, Sussex Conservation District is also very responsive to the citizens of Sussex County. I think we have one of the best in Jessica Watson, who she bleeds for the citizens of Sussex County. Jessica is the program manager at Sussex Conservation District. So they all are concerned with mitigating potential impacts. And looking at the DENREC report or studies, if Jim referenced, there are some easements on private property that need to the residents, if they can work with DENREC and DELDOT and such. There are various ways to minimize disturbance to the residential properties, such as horizontal directional drilling. They can install pipes below the ground surface and not tear up driveways or the property itself. So from the surface, you won't be able to tell. Other options are just cutting a trench, installing it, and they could put a new driveway, in the driveway area. Obviously, we don't want to go under houses or things like that. So, and then DelDOT can also help to mitigate, as they did a wonderful job with the Indian River Inlet when they were having the breach after the bridge was constructed. They did a fine job in analyzing that situation and resolving or mitigating flooding conditions. We live in a coastal environment. We're never going to get rid of flooding. We have to mitigate it, though. We have to try to do our best. So, just to sum it up, in my opinion, this project, as well as if we can get some of the DEMREC solutions implemented, will help to improve the quality of life of the existing residents of Oak Orchard, as well as the new residents. And if I may say, if you have 100 houses built, 100 plus houses built, Oak Orchard is going to also pick up over 100 more voices that they can call out to DENREC and DelDOT to help them to mitigate the flooding issue.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. I know it's been a long afternoon, and it's going to be a lot longer if we just keep tittering and twittering among ourselves, and I have to stop and talk to you about it. So please, let's let this gentleman finish, and then I assure you that every one of you will get a chance to speak. Go ahead, sir.
With that said, thank you very much.
The final speaker before I conclude is Betty Teston.
Good evening, and I guess everybody's glad to hear the final speaker is up. I'm Betty Tustin. I'm a senior project manager with the traffic group, and I run the Delmarva office in Berlin, Maryland. I am a professionally licensed civil engineer. Okay, so usually I'm up here talking about a traffic impact study, but no traffic impact study was required for this development because it fell into the little window that DelDOT has in their development coordination manual, that it generates less than 200 vehicle trips a day and less than 200 vehicle trips during a peak hour. And so in lieu of doing a traffic impact study, we were allowed to make a contribution to the area-wide study fee. And that contribution is calculated to be $12,580. And DelDOT has also required the developer to enter into a traffic signal agreement for Delaware 24 and Gull Point Road. And what that means is that when a traffic signal is deemed to be warranted, whatever parties have entered into a traffic signal agreement with DelDOT will be required to design and construct that signal. And DelDOT is also required that we contribute to their hazard elimination program at the intersection of Delaware Route 24 and Mount Joy Road, Oak Orchard Road. And we'll be working with DelDOT to figure out what that contribution will be. River Road in our area of site access is approximately 24 to 26 feet wide, 12-foot lanes. There are some grass shoulders along River Road in part, but we will be required to and will comply to improve our site frontage to DelDOT standards, which are for local roads 11-foot lanes and 5-foot shoulders.
And how big is that road frontage?
The road frontage will be determined through the site plan review process in the plan submittal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what is the road frontage? I mean, is that a linear number based on the site plan?
Do we have a number roughly of the frontage, Jim?
I don't have a linear footage, but you can find it out.
Okay. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Oh. So like from here to approximately here, if you can. All right, you know here.
What is it?
Okay, there we go. Okay, so our site frontage runs approximately here to about here. Can you guys see that? But again, that will be worked out with DelDOT, and whatever they require, people will have to do. There we go. Something like that. Reminds me, I brought out my, oh, there it is. Oh, I have some exhibits, 2 exhibits to show. Okay, good to you? Okay. I don't need them right now, though.
That's okay.
Thank you. So that's my best answer that I have right now. So with regard to, I know safety was a concern, and so we requested 3 years of crash data from DelDOT, which is typically how far back they go. And I have a few copies of this exhibit. Let's bring it up.
Are the current exhibits up from the flash drive you put in earlier?
Yes.
Okay. So then we can't present that. Oh, right, no. Edits on the third one.
Okay.
If I can just drive real quick.
Or E or?
I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
Let Jamie drive it. Are you driving it? Yes, she is, okay.
Okay.
Kim?
So as you can see, DelDOT provided crash data from milepost 0.42 to 2.34, approximately 2 miles from the intersection of on Dawson Landing Road over to Oak Orchard Road. And in the past 3 years, there have been 4 crashes there. One was at Chief Road, and the other 3 were at Oak Orchard and River Road. 2 of them were in 2022, and 2 crashes were in 2020. So
How far back did that go, just so I've got?
3 years is typically what we look back at,
Okay.
because things change over the course of time. All right, so the next thing I want to do is talk about traffic volumes, because I know that's something that touches everyone. We are all touched by traffic, and so let's talk about traffic volumes. And how do we get that?
Would you,
Just go back to the drive.
there's one next to it.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, so then. There we go. Yep. Okay, and bear with me, I'm going to try something a little different with you all and for the benefit of the audience, because as I said, traffic touches everyone, and I'm constantly trying to come up with ways to help us understand traffic volumes. So traffic volumes that are projected to be generated by this development are 1,258. Now that means at the driveway, right here where it says site access. That's 629 going in, 629 going out for the whole day period. Now when they come out, they all don't go in one direction. We estimated that 59% will go to the east and that 41% will go to the west. So that means in the section to the east of our site access, we will be adding 371 cars per day in each direction. Right now, the ADT on River Road is 742. And then conversely, going to the west, we will be adding 258 cars in each direction for the whole 24-hour period. Okay, so now how do we understand what that number means? So if you take the trips that are going to the east, 371 in one direction, and you divide it up evenly for a 24-hour period. Now, I know traffic isn't that evenly flowed, but let's just assume that it is. That's one vehicle in each direction every 4 minutes, one additional vehicle. Now, a few moments ago, Mr. Whitehouse was searching for Exhibit 15, and it took a bit of time. We were getting a little restless. I didn't time it, but I bet it was less than 4 minutes that it took you to get that exhibit. And that, just imagine that amount of time, one vehicle went one way and one vehicle went another way. What do you think? Does that help?
What are the chances that they're going to do that?
What?
That people are going to leave at 4-minute intervals.
Well, that's what I said. They're spread out. We're not, just trying to come up with a generalized discussion. But since you brought that up, for traffic analysis, what we do is we look at a peak hour. And that's the hour where all of it's concentrated in 1 hour of a day. For our site, the peak hour is 46 in the evening peak hour, coming from the east and going in to the site. 41 going out the other direction. So that's roughly one car in each direction for 80 seconds, each 80 seconds during that highest volume hour of the day. So what's 80 seconds? Well, some of you are familiar with the intersection of 113 and 20 in Millsboro, and that has a cycle length of approximately 150 seconds, which means when it turns green, you're on 113, it turns green, it will be, for simplicity, let's say it stays green for 75 seconds, then it goes to red, we're going to ignore the yellow, keep things simple, for 75 seconds, and that's 150 seconds. So just to keep my 80, I want my 80 number. So let's say you come up to the intersection and it's a 160-second cycle. So it's red for 80 seconds and it's green for 80 seconds. You come up to the intersection, it turns red. And you wait for 80 seconds for it to turn green. Now just imagine that signal and how long you had sat there before. And during that 80 seconds, one car comes from the east, one car comes to the west. And you're probably saying, why does DelDOT have a signal here for one car every 80 seconds? Does that help? Just trying different ways to help put traffic volumes in context. And also want to point out that for a two-lane roadway, there are a lot of different factors that are used in the engineering world to determine what volume of traffic it can handle for a good level of service, like a level service B. It depends on the road curvature, it depends on the grade, it depends on the number of driveways, and a lot of different factors. But generally speaking, a two-lane roadway can carry, about 4,400 vehicles a day. And as you can see, we're well under that. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you.
No questions?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Thank you. So to conclude, I just run through the 99-9C requirements and conditions of approval. So the proposed development complies with the 99-9C requirements of the code as follows. The plan first integrates the proposed subdivision into existing terrain and surrounding landscape. As the plan shows and was just described, the applicant proposes significant open space totaling 47.2% of the site, provides a 50 feet setback to adjacent agricultural uses, a minimum 30 feet landscape buffer to all agricultural uses, and a minimum 20 feet buffer from adjacent residential uses. There are 5.4 acres more or less of wetlands on the site, and as was discussed, there was voluntary buffers that were provided in compliance with the new buffer ordinance. The project is located within flood zone X and a small portion within flood zone AE, and all lots are located above base flood elevations. There are no known sites that require historic preservation on site. However, the applicant proposes the installation of a historic marker to recognize the history of this area, and that is memorialized in the conditions of approval that were submitted into the record. There was also one comment that mentioned burial grounds of ancestors near or on the site. We weren't exactly sure, but from the research we did, we believe that was certainly not located, obviously, to our knowledge on our site, but it was located across Chief Road on another property, and another person's property. The plan preserves large tracts of open space, as I stated, and preserves scenic views, as previously mentioned. There will be a minimization of tree, vegetation, and soil removal, and grade changes, as previously explained. Screening of objectionable features from neighboring properties and roadways will be provided by the buffers, some of which are in excess of code requirements. The addition of the afforestation area will also provide privacy for residents living on the backside of the development. Water is anticipated to be provided by Tidewater Utilities. Wastewater is anticipated to be provided by Sussex County. Arrangements will be made with a commercial trash hauler to provide for trash collection. Mr. Erickson and Mr. Sauter discussed stormwater. I will not repeat that. The stormwater management facilities will be designed in accordance with applicable standards. The proposed development is planned in a way to minimize erosion, sedimentation, changes in groundwater level, increased rates of runoff, potential for flooding, and design of drainage so that groundwater recharge is maximized. The plan accounts for safe vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and to adjacent ways. The entrance to the community will be designed per Delta standards, and all roadways will be designed in accordance with Sussex County standards. 5 feet sidewalks are proposed in the community, along with an anticipated trail, as I stated before. And then the site also provides the emergency access, promoting safety, emergency access, obviously, and interconnectivity. It is anticipated that the proposed community will cause current values to remain the same, if not increase the values of other properties in the area. The proposed subdivision will not adversely affect farmland. As explained, preservation and buffer considerations have been implemented and incorporated into the plan. A series of discussions were held with DelDOT officials concerning roadway improvements, as just discussed. The project's compatible with other nearby land uses and is therefore compatible in design, density, and style. As previously explained, there will also be an efficient stormwater management system that acts as an amenity. And the runoff will be treated for water quality and quantity prior to discharge. The plan is consistent with the Sussex County Comprehensive Code for the reasons stated this evening and for reasons stated in the applicant's written submission. I will conclude by addressing what I consider to be well-settled law on subdivisions in Delaware. The Delaware Supreme Court, in the case of Tony Ashburn and Sons versus Kent County Regional Planning Commission, reaffirmed the law as it applies to subdivisions that had been settled in earlier cases. A quote some of you know, and certainly Council Robertson knows and is familiar with, states as follows, quote, "When people own land for a specific use, they are entitled to rely on the fact that they can implement that use, provided the project complies with all specific criteria found in ordinances and subject to reasonable conditions which the Planning Commission may impose, in order to minimize adverse impact on nearby landowners and residents. To hold otherwise would subject a purchaser of land zoned for a specific use to the future whim or caprice of the Commission by clothing it with the ability to impose ad hoc requirements on the use of land not specified anywhere in the ordinances. The result would be the imposition of uncertainty on all landowners respecting whether they can safely rely on the permitted uses conferred on their land under the zoning ordinances." End quote. In earlier case law, and specifically Eastlake Partners, the Delaware Superior Court held that while the desires of the public in respect to uses are pertinent to the zoning of land, when the initial uses for land are established, such evidence is pertinent to site plan review, except insofar as it is limited to proposed conditions and safeguards to be imposed upon the plan itself, and that the Planning Commission has no power to reject a site plan because the residents do not want the land use plan, want the land use for a project that is permitted use under the applicable zoning district. In that case, the Superior Court also explained, quote, "The Planning Commission may not reject a site plan for permitted use on the grounds that the project will eventually affect the general neighborhood." End quote. So what all of this means is that if a subdivision complies, it should be approved. However, these cases also state, and this is important, that the Commission has the ability to impose reasonable conditions if those conditions are based on factors contained in the record. I conclude by stating that this project complies with the zoning and subdivision requirements of the code and is also consistent with the comprehensive plan. The applicant requests the Commission's approval of the Stillwater Harbor major subdivision, subject to conditions of approval submitted into the record this evening. And as stated, our team's obviously available for questions. I'd also appreciate the opportunity to speak for a few minutes at the conclusion if there's any questions that we can answer. There certainly could be some new statements that we may have never heard before on this one. There's a lot of interest in the application, and I'd like to be able to address anything that the public would like to ask us so that open issues are addressed on the record to the fullest extent possible before the record is closed. Thank you in advance for this consideration. Certainly, if it's not applicable, you don't have to give me the time. That concludes our presentation, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, questions? Ms. Hoy Stevenson?
Sure. All right. It said you'd be raising the road at some point. Where and how much of it?
Just for the record, again, this is Jim Erickson. So we're not going to be raising the road. In the DENREC evaluation, one of the remediation methods that they recommended is to raise the road in several locations where the road's very low and floods.
So you just threw that out there for the heck of it. Okay. Regarding the boat ramp, you said you were going to do something with the boat ramp area. Is that a public boat ramp? Do you
So
own the
again,
property?
what I was presenting was a concept plan from DENREC, and in their report, they identified remediations. What I was trying to show was that what those remediations would be. Basically, without proper easements, DENREC can't utilize those remediations. And so what we were trying to just show is basically what the intention is by DENREC in the future.
But it has nothing to do with this development.
Well, what it has to do with the development is that we do drain to those areas. And as we stated, we're showing no adverse impact or improving those areas. But we wanted to show that there is a plan for that, and that basically it's going to require cooperation from everyone in the vicinity.
Gotcha. Okay, stay right there, I'm sure. What is the water table here, by the way?
Seasonal high is around elevation 5.
Okay. And since you're putting in a road for safety vehicles, emergency vehicles in the back, why didn't you make that just the entrance and then not worry with any of these troubles?
So the primary reason is that there's private property owners that actually live off of that road, and so we're trying to reduce the number of trips through that area specifically. And in initial correspondence with DELDOT, the main entrance was proposed, obviously off River Road. The addition of the emergency access was for the limited purpose of providing emergency access to the site, and also trying as much as possible to be respectful to people that have lived there for a very long time. So if we now have main entrance, everyday traffic like Ms. Tustin just talked about coming in and out there, it wasn't part of the consideration and design. So now we have this emergency access that addresses the concern raised about drainage and impassability of the road when closures occur. Did that answer your question?
It did, not very well, but it did.
Okay.
Let me see
What
the
is-
site plan that shows where the property, the residents are there, that, not to interrupt you.
Oh, no, go ahead, please. I mean, it's on
Can
the
you show
same
the
topic.
site plan that shows the,
Sure, I could, it's
the
probably
image?
easier actually just to look at the aerial. Let's see. Jamie, could I get that back? I never, yeah. So, let's see. So there are owners that live, there's an owner, I believe, that lives here, and then there's some people that live along this portion as well. So we were just concerned about people would be flowing basically from here all the way down and then filing into the property like that.
And what level road is there now?
There's a 8 to 12 foot wide. I had mentioned this during my presentation. There's a 50-foot easement of record that's included in the application's exhibit package. There is we believe somewhere, I think a 12-foot wide unimproved road currently. And I acknowledge understandable need to address some maintenance considerations. We need to work with the property owners that also benefit from that easement and are willing to do so.
it says 45-foot easement, just for the record.
It actually, I believe, states 50 feet easement on the record plan. There's a notation with an arrow that specifically goes to the plan.
45 wide easement for emergency access roadway.
Oh, yeah, that's on your side. I'm talking about, thank you for bringing that up. So I'm speaking about the actual easement of Jackson Drain Lane that crosses our site that would provide access to Oak Orchard.
To get to this, okay.
Correct. But presently, it's not improved.
But you have an easement to use that property by
It
buying that
crosses.
other piece.
That's correct.
And you said checking for historical significance. What did you do to check for the historical significance of
Yep, we've actually, we have talked to Ed Otter. We have initial assessment, and it confirms the same information that Plus provided.
Was
And
on the
I did
property,
receive-
or I don't understand, what do you mean? You talked to Ed Otter?
We engaged Ed Otter, and he performed an assessment.
Thank you.
Yes.
There you go. Okay. That's it for me for now.
Okay, I think at this point, you take a seat just for a second. we actually, through their ongoing efforts to foster intergovernmental coordination, our good friends at DelDOT very graciously provided us with an expert this evening to chat with us about traffic issues. And Todd, are you somewhere? There you go. Yeah, come on up and introduce yourself. And ladies and gentlemen, DelDOT is cooperating with us. They're providing us an expert to help the commission understand the traffic nuances and the impacts. He is here to be of assistance to us, and we appreciate that. And with that, I'll give you the floor.
I appreciate the introduction. My name is Todd Sammons. I'm the Assistant Director within Development Coordination within DelDOT, Division of Planning. I don't know that I'm the expert on everything, but I will do my best to answer all DelDOT questions. I just want to let the Commission know, as well as the public, happy to be here, but there's many facets within DelDOT, many experts within DelDOT, and I cannot answer every question, but I will do my best to answer every one. And just so everybody knows, too, is what we do is process land use approvals that come through the county's municipalities, and that's why we're called DelDOT Development Coordination. So hopefully everybody will understand that we have a certain niche. But
all right, well, Ms. Hoy-Stevenson had a couple of DelDOT-related questions. I thought you might like to
Sure.
weigh in on those.
Yeah, well, the first one is that why there wasn't a study required, since the traffic person told us it's going to be a good 500 trips a day.
We have certain warrants that have to be met for analysis to occur, and we look at a lot of factors on whether the traffic analysis is needed or not. I want to also give a caveat to the public because it's relative. If you're used to living on a road that has one car a day on it, and then all of a sudden there's going to be 2 or 3, it's a huge increase, it's a huge change. So I don't want to undermine the fact that there's going to be a lot more traffic out there, but from a perspective of speaking, what a local road can handle, I think Betty Tustin, the developer's engineer, did a very good explanation of how we look at the local roads and 2-lane roads, what they can handle, and usually around 4,400 average daily trips is where we're at. So with the 742 that are out there, plus the 1,200 and change, I think, that's proposed with this development, it would not meet the warrants of the thresholds. The road should be adequate from a capacity standpoint to manage the traffic and mitigate it that's going to be out there. I understand there's other factors. I'm just saying from a capacity standpoint. We also can look at analysis if the local land use agency deems it's necessary, or we determine that there's potentially safety or operational concerns that are out there. But based on the capacity, then they didn't need to do traffic analysis. We actually pulled other information in, and Betty covered that in her presentation with regards to the things that they'll need to help mitigate out there with the DelDOT projects.
But that they're going to be on the hook for the, 200 feet in front of, that's their property.
Yes, and even though they're not doing a intense detailed analysis, which we call traffic impact studies or traffic operational analysis, there is traffic analysis that goes on as they go through the subdivision entrance plan review process. And be such things as we'll analyze or they need turn lanes to go into their site, what the lengths of those turn lanes should be, look at the roadway frontage, which you just touched on, and we do projected frontage, so it's not just, if they have a 50-foot easement in, we project out, much to the chagrin of the developers, which is approximately 800 or more feet in this one. Now, we have to take other factors in because, we take into account the community, the citizens out there, the amount of right-of-way that's out there, the drainage, those types of things. So I can't sit here today and say that it's going to be 800 feet of a roadway improvement, but that's what we will start to work with the developer if this project's approved to try to accomplish, and then we'll back down from them. And also Betty touched on it, would be 11-foot travel lanes and 5-foot shoulders in that area, as well as drainage improvements, a lot of mitigating efforts along that area there.
That's, I didn't know if you had any information about road damage that's occurred back there because of the flooding. I mean, I've been on that road with water up to my door, so,
Yep. And so this development is very early. It's like in the infancy of going through our review and plan approval process. And when it goes through and it actually makes a formal submission, which it has not for the design of the entrance and for any of the roadway improvements, it hasn't done that yet. All sections and all facets within DelDOT, as well as other times, maybe some other agencies will have a chance to comment on that design and those items. So we have not had a chance to even look at that. They've only come in for what we call like a pre-submittal meeting, a project coordination meeting, to say, hey, this is what we're proposing, and we kind of give them an idea what to expect as they go through the process if they're approved. We've also looked at, they wanted to make a determination whether traffic analysis was needed, so we've done that. So again, they're in the infancy. But great question again. I can further elaborate on that in that, when they come in, they're going to look at the roadway width, they're going to look at the drainage. There's like Tyler Brown, with DENREC, we reached out to him before this meeting because I'm the only person that came from DelDOT, but we understood, we got to see a lot of the information that was forwarded from the public through maybe the legislators or through your support staff here. So we tried to be prepared, and so we reached out to DENREC, we reached out to Sussex Conservation District, and all of them had said that the public or the commission can reach out to them to talk about certain things here. And one of the things they said from DENREC is actively working on several drainage issues in the Oak Orchard area and can provide technical assistance and answer any questions regarding the flood mitigations. Any drainage concerns obviously can go through Sussex Conservation District with regards to the development. DelDOT, obviously, we take care of the infrastructure that we maintain, the roadway specifically, and we're going to be commenting on when that design is proposed to us or presented to us, we're going to be commenting on all those things. We also have within DelDOT, because very conscious of coastal sea rise, they've created we have a transportation resiliency and sustainability group now that look at this. We also have the district that actually, they're the ones who are the ground, feet on the ground that go out there and close the road when there's flooding. So there's a lot of aspects and facets that are going to be considered once this design starts.
That's because,
Hopefully that helps.
It does, but my main concern is the safety of the people who live there now and the people who would be coming there.
Right.
Because hurricane season is when everybody's here.
Sure.
And getting people in and out on a road that's already floods, when you got 6 inches of rain, is a worry to me.
It is, and as through the correspondence and the questions that came in, we could see that the fire department raised that as well as our district, and our district hasn't again had a chance to review the design or the proposals or really the site. They've only looked at a conceptual, but they were in concert with the fire department in that there was concern with this. So I think that's when the developer took the initiative to go out and get the emergency access that's towards the back of the property, that's closer to Route 24. From an access perspective, we want to manage and mitigate access. We don't want a lot of access points, but I think we would have no problem supporting this because it would allow for the emergency access vehicles in and also people out.
Would you have requirements for how that road would be built? So again, I'm thinking
Sure.
hurricane comes, everybody's got to get out. They can't get out on the road that's already flooded. Is it going to be something that a car could get on too?
The only thing that
requirements for that?
Yeah, we only have authority over the state maintained roads. We could make a recommendation, but that would fall under the purview of Sussex County itself with regards to a private road.
I just want,
Yeah.
yeah, we do have the say. Okay, I just wanted to see
Yes.
if there were suggestions being made.
So
But
to
we
that
would have,
point-
I'm sorry, we would have say over the access, and then obviously we would support any questions or comments or concerns. If you ask for a recommendation on the private road, we would give it, but we try to stay in our own lane. So.
So
Appreciate
not
it. Thank
to interrupt you, Kim,
No,
but
go ahead. I'm done.
to that point for that emergency access, not to put you on the spot, but would you be of the opinion that that should be a regular entrance, not just emergency access?
I'm really not at liberty to say
Okay.
for that, but we would consider it, and we would, once they gave us the relevant information to make a educated consideration, then we would give an opinion on that.
Okay.
I think I would be premature in saying something right now because I don't know all the factors, and it seems like there's a lot of potential impacts or concerns with that, and with it being a private road, that would really fall underneath the Sussex County. As far as an entrance, again, it hasn't been presented to us, we haven't looked at it, but let's just say there was no benign factors, there was no adverse factors with having an access there versus on River Road. I don't know that the department would have a problem with that. But there are many factors that come into where access points go, and I do not have that information, nor have we looked at a design now, so I want to give that clarity there. But yes, we would, of course, will consider it.
Okay. I have one more for you before you
Sure,
leave, if you're
sure.
finished.
No, I'm finished. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I was going to ask the engineer about the comment that was made in the plus review from DelDOT about looping some of the roadways. You support of that?
About, so you
Looping
say
some
that
of the, they have the cul-de-sacs. Looks like if they would eliminate a couple of lots, they could loop the roads together, which would make it more continuous flow throughout the community.
So I
That's one of
assume
the
this is
comments
going to
that
be, I assume this is going to be non-state maintained roads within the subdivision, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
so-
county standard road.
I think,
There'll be I think the applicant is proposing to construct the roads to the county spec, which means they'd be privately maintained. Right?
yeah, I would refrain from giving, I apologize, but I
That's
just,
okay.
No, we get it.
I didn't want to put
No,
you on the
I
spot.
understand.
yeah, no, it's fine. Please ask me anything, but I don't want to add problems or confusion one way or the other when I'm trying to provide clarity. And if it's not under our purview, it's probably better if I don't, so,
It's been a big help, thank you.
okay.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Anything, Tom?
I've got one, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Do you know if the impact, or the improvements to River Road would cost any of the residents any of their front property due to widening the road?
So that's a great question. Those are, so again, we haven't seen a design, we haven't seen, because the developers, engineers would go out and actually survey all the right-of-way, they would propose what could fit in there, but, from our standards, we'd want to see 11-foot travel lanes to 5-foot shoulders, and then we want to see the drainage improved and supported to mitigate all that. But it comes down to what's actually out there, what can fit out there. So we're left with the task of trying to make sure that the citizens, the traveling public, as well as potential new citizens and traveling public are protected, as well as what can work out there. So until we see the design, I don't know what can fit out there. But we would try to achieve that maximum improvement without impacting the residents out there adversely. And it would be up to the developer typically to obtain any additional right-of-way or easements out there. Now, typically, there is enough right-of-way on these sections of road to fit these types of improvements in. Because of over the years, that right-of-way has been gained, easements have been gained, but it's not always the case. So then we've got to balance that out with trying to fit those improvements in there with what's actually existing. Sometimes they get necked down in certain areas because maybe there's a 200-year-old century tree, or there's certain things that you can't. You've got to do a road diet, we call it, but that's what we would promote and tell them we'd set out for them to try to design. Did I explain that enough? So.
Yeah, it's a little early for the questions.
Yes.
Maybe the engineer can give me an answer on that, too.
And to go back to your question, which we would be happy to comment on typical subdivision designs that we see, and when they're state-maintained roads, like we have our standards, which are in the Development Coordination Manual, I'm happy to share that with the staff to give to you. So I don't want to not answer your question, but related to this one, we haven't seen anything but a conceptual, and since it's not state-maintained, I can't give an official opinion on it, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Simmons? All right, sir.
Okay.
Really, thank you
Yeah,
very
really,
much
thanks a
for
lot.
being
I
here.
appreciate you.
Now, we do this every other Thursday.
Oh, I know, so.
You're welcome to come.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks for being here. Thank you. Okay. All right, where were we? You're
I'm
good?
finished. I'm
Okay, do
finished.
you have anything for the applicant that you would like to ask, Ms. Wingate?
No, I think I'm good for right now, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mears.
I'd like to address the same question I asked DelDOT with
Okay.
the engineer.
You want
Do
to
you
repeat the question?
anticipate the DelDOT road improvements on River Road causing any property loss to the owners on River Road?
So just to be very clear, any easements or right-of-way that would be required for the widening would have to be purchased from the property owners. It's completely elective. So, we haven't fully drawn it out to the point that we've connected everything at compliance slopes with DelDOT standards. It's all still in preliminary state. So we will do our best to fit it in the right-of-way, and if we're going to approach people with easements if we need to approach them, and they can respond to that, how they choose to respond to that. And if we have to, we'll come back to DelDOT, and we'll make a creative solution to maintain a safe entrance.
Are they 10-foot right-of-ways through there for the most part? Is it 10-foot?
I'm sorry,
Off the roadway, is it 10-foot?
Existing.
Yeah.
Oh, the existing road width?
Yeah.
In front of the site, it's actually 24 to 26 feet wide.
The right-of-way.
The
the right-of-way itself?
right-of-way
I'm sorry.
for the utilities, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe I was getting asked the wrong question. The right-of-way itself in that area actually varies. It's like 42 to 46 feet wide. It's an oddball one. Normally, they're pretty standard 50. This one's variable at kind of weird dimensions. But.
Thank you.
I have another one. The emergency entrance, I'm a little confused on how it impacts private property. I heard Ms. Pete say something about that. And what would make it an emergency entrance? Would it be just a sign that says, don't use this, or?
Sure. So there's a gate.
There would be a gate.
Absolutely, yes. And so we actually have it located, if you look here, it's on the one a little bit on the top side. It's actually located at the community side. That was very much intentional at the recommendation of DelDOT. We have coordinated that emergency access with them to make sure they were okay with it. The gate itself, it would be locked. It would have a Knox box on it so the fire department and emergency services can access it. We would anticipate the president of the HOA would have the other keys, so the HOA in an emergency could also get there, but we don't want everyone to have a key. The intention is very much to limit that.
Understood. Okay, I've got a question for Ms. Pete. Would you explain the easement for the emergency road again?
Sure.
I'm confused by
Yep.
the private property owners and how that impacts them.
So essentially, there is a recorded easement plan that benefits a number of properties off of this easement here, and it crosses our site. My understanding is that there's a property owner here. I believe his name is Mr. Jan Harmon. And then there are other property owners that are also located back here. So the concern is that you'd have people, remember that we're coming from Oak Orchard, coming through, disturbing these people if you had our main entrance. And we understand what the volumes are, at least preliminarily, and that was why that was taken into consideration. Obviously, this wasn't originally planned either. It was something that was taken into consideration as a result of the letter submitted by the fire company. We've met with them multiple times. There was a suggestion that it would be best if they came from the opposite side when emergencies occur. Otherwise, they do use the other access, obviously. But it really was trying to address the purpose of acquiring this property was to address emergency access issues specifically when the road is impassable during floods, River Road specifically.
Okay. I was confused by, I thought you had ownership of that property. I didn't understand you were talking about the road that led to it. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So there's an easement that's actually, that we're proposed on the parcel that we do own, this 22.6.01, and then an easement of record that crosses that property and that benefits this property for ingress and egress onto Oak Orchard, out and onto Oak Orchard.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else, Mr. Mears?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no, quite all right. Let's see, staff, anything on your end? Okay. Mr. Whitehouse?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, Counselor?
Just maybe we talked about that easement. Is that easement in the record anywhere? Is it in the, okay.
Yes, it's under the, I believe, Exhibit 20.
Okay, all right, thanks. That's all I have, thanks.
All right, thank you.